During this season of Arab revolutions, the news media have often been at the heart of the story. Dictators have blamed the media, this network among them, for creating or nurturing political discontent. Anti-government protesters have thanked the media for the role they've played and sometimes complained about a lack of coverage because those protesters know that news coverage can drive stories and further their revolutionary agenda. And there have been signs that from Tunisia to Egypt to Syria to Libya that many Arabs in authoritarian states are losing their fear of talking to the media. Eman al-Obeidy is one of those people. She's the Libyan woman who on March 26th burst into the Roxas Hotel in Tripoli, the base for foreign journalists there, to tell anyone who would listen that she had been gang raped by some of President Gaddafi's men. What followed was chaos. Security personnel moved in to silence the woman, and they manhandled journalists trying to get her story. Our starting point this week is Tripoli, but the phenomenon we're talking about goes well beyond Libya. How the loss of fear on the part of many Arabs has become an integral part of the information battle being fought across the Arab world. In a country in the midst of a civil war with conflicting and confusing reports from the front lines, this was a much simpler story, but every bit as chilling. The story of a casualty of war, a woman who walked right into the foreign media's hotel in Tripoli.
I found myself walking into the room 10 yards behind Eman al-Obeidy, and I, like everyone else in the room, was taken completely by surprise when she started screaming at the top of her voice, "Do you see what this Gaddafi militia has done to me?" It was an electric moment.
She's been through this hellish ordeal, and she goes straight to where the foreign journalists are. Not the local journalists, she goes straight to where the foreign journalists are, and she starts to tell her story. And the hotel staff converge on her to stop her from speaking.
They came across and shouted, "Shut up, be quiet, what on earth, who on earth do you think you are? You're a traitor, you're betraying Gaddafi." But she was still managing to tell us that, first of all, that she had been raped, she said, by as many as 15 men. She said that she had been tied up. She showed us marks on her wrists and on her ankles where she'd been bound up.
As we saw in the videotape, some journalists did actually try to step in between Miss Obeidy and the security forces. So that question of, what do I do? Do I write things down? Do I help this woman?
And all the journalists together suddenly felt that we were the only ones who were between her and the regime whom she accused of abusing her.
How are you going with her?
Yes, we have to be objective. Yes, we have to be impartial. But suddenly that seemed to fall away because we realized that we just had to protect her because of the threats and violence being meted out on her.
I don't know. Why are you taking me?
Whatever efforts the media corps made on Eman al-Obeidy's behalf came to naught.
The authorities here are refusing to say where they are taking this woman.
She was taken away, no one knew where. And then came the regime's media counteroffensive via state-run TV.
تقول أنا اغتصبني فلان وكتائب القذافي ويعني ونزل لي شوية دموع التماسيح.
State-controlled Libyan media had an anchor woman on who called her a prostitute, who called her a liar, who called her mentally unstable and an alcoholic.
حتى العاهرة أحيانا قد تكون عندها وطنية اتجاه الوطن عندما تعرف أن وطنها في خطر حتى العاهرة.
So this is how state-controlled media in Libya would have treated her had she tried to go to them with her case. They would have simply dismissed her, and they've been trying to smear her ever since.
Then came the counteroffensive, delivered by the woman's mother via non-Libyan TV.
Her mother spoke to Jazeera Arabic and came out strongly anti-government, strongly pro-democracy, calling out Gaddafi by name. That was amazing. That kind of bravery is what it takes.
One story, two acts of bravery and defiance. A woman and her mother both saying the kinds of things that for years Libyans and other Arabs have been afraid to say to foreign reporters.
The security forces prevented the funeral.
There was a similar story in Syria when a human rights activist, Wissam Taraf, spoke to CNN on a condition of non-anonymity.
I want to point out that we offered to talk to him without using his name, but he insisted that he wanted his name used.
It's obviously a very brave act, And it's an incredible step in an environment like Syria.
Why do you want us to use your name? Why is that so important?
Syrian people who are living abroad, who are calling Arab networks, TVs, and hiding their name, should stop it now. This element of fear has to be broken.
But he's saying this is the time now to break through this barrier of fear and to use our real names. So young people know these tactics are old and they're not intimidated. And we're seeing in Syria that more and more towns and villages are rising up against the Assad regime.
I often start out interviews in the past by saying, I don't know your name, I don't want to know your name. I just want to know your opinion on this. I just want the facts. And that gives some sense of safety. But that kind of fear, that kind of anonymity helps keep regimes in power. So what the Syrian activists did is very important.
Such stories, while noteworthy, newsworthy, remain the exception rather than the new rule. They represent significant cracks in the Arab world's wall of fear, yet the wall remains.
People are terrified. I saw taxi drivers who had been arrested and pulled over and interrogated simply because they were giving us lifts around the city, come back into the car and their hands were trembling with fear. People are unwilling to talk because of what the regime has already done. Trust me, fear and loathing is alive and well in Libya today.
Part of that fear may come down to confusion. Libyans don't know what or who to believe. Their domestic TV channels, all state-run, which tell them Gaddafi's forces are winning, or outside sources like Al Jazeera that Gaddafi's channels blame for the uprising.
We used to respect our brothers in Qatar, but the brothers in Qatar directed Al Jazeera to incitement and to spread lies.
But Libyans now have a new satellite news option run by Libyans. The organizers of the new channel are basing it in Qatar and establishing a bureau in Benghazi, beaming in their version of the story to Libyan viewers.
We're able to do something that it's hard to do it before, that we put a TV together, programs and infrastructure of TV station, a satellite TV station on 11 days. It will be like an institution. We can transfer it to Libya when the time is right.
The time is not yet right. Tripoli remains under Colonel Gaddafi's control. As for Eman al-Obeidy, the woman who said she was raped, this past Thursday, when asked about her whereabouts, Gaddafi's spokesman said he didn't know, then paradoxically said she might soon be available for an interview.
Hopefully, by Saturday, 2 of your female journalists will meet her. How's that? By Saturday.
The news conference felt like a farce.
I think it's time for the media to basically boycott the Gaddafi regime, because he uses them basically to get his lies and propaganda out. And why do they give him so much media time when ordinary Libyans and Libyan revolutionaries do not get half the airtime that Gaddafi and his propaganda machine gets? And I think it's another kind of unfair weapon that he's using against Libyan revolutionaries.
Both sides will use every weapon at their disposal in the information wars over Libya, Syria, and beyond. Libyans opposed to Muammar Gaddafi will use the foreign media, and Gaddafi will use his channels and the foreign media when it suits him. And he'll also play on his opponent's fears, what's left of them.